Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about two important issues. The first one is about the Indian ceasefire violations all along the line of control. And today the ambassadors, diplomats and defense attaches also visited the line of control where they were briefed about the current situation and on-ground situation rather. And the diplomatic community also met the victims of Indian shelling there. So as it says, Indian continues ceasefire violations all along the line of control, and we'll be also talking about Indian war hysteria. We'll be talking about Pakistan's role in Afghan peace process, and we'll also be talking about Pak-US collaboration for Afghanistan peace. Primarily, these will be the areas of discussion today regarding first one about the India and Pakistan issue, and second about the role of Pakistan. As we all know that the American ambassador to Pakistan, Mr. William Todd, he's also mentioned that the ties between Pakistan and United States of America, they are very important and they cannot be at the cost of the Indians. He also said that Pakistan is an essential regional partner and Pakistan is playing its role very wisely regarding the Afghan peace process. So these are the major areas of our program. We'll be talking about them. Let me introduce you to our panelists. On my right is Ali Sarwar Naqvi Saab, Senior Ambassador, former diplomat. Sir, thank you very much for your time. And we'll be joined in shortly by Javed Siddique Saab, who's a senior journalist and also an anchor person. And on the Skype, we have been joined in by Lieutenant General retired Raza Muhammad Khan Saab, who's a senior analyst, former president of NDU. General Saab, thank you very much for your time also, sir. Now, first of all, sir, talking about the Indian continuous ceasefire violations all along the line of control. Ambassador Saab, what we have witnessed that even the military attaches, the ambassadors and the senior officials of various diplomatic community, I would say, they were taken to the LOC and they were shown what exactly is happening on ground. They also met the families of the victims and those who were also injured during that particular issue. Now, sir, it's a very positive move, I guess. At least the foreign community should know what is happening out there. Your take on that particular point, sir?
Thank you, Faisal. Yes, I think this is an exercise that we have undertaken from time to time, and it is very important because this enables us to reach out to the rest of the world through their diplomatic representatives, their defense attaches, even some ambassadors and their public relations officials, their press attaches, their other diplomats. So it is very important to show to them what is happening, and that becomes a real. I have met a few diplomats in the past who were convinced of our position because they had traveled to the line of control. And
as they say, seeing is believing.
Seeing is believing, exactly. I mean, or this is worth 1,000 words or 100,000 words, because when there is a person in personal contact. Now, that is one. The other thing is that the Indian ceasefire violations have become routine, and that is very worrying.
So 2 soldiers were martyred yesterday also.
Yeah, I mean, they keep doing this. I don't know what is the level at which this decision is taken on their side, because no responsible level of leadership would be provoking like this. They claim that we have been doing this or that, but even if there are some violations from our side, hypothetically speaking, they can raise it in our mutual consultation process, where is the commanders, the local commanders, then it is also at the DGMO level and diplomatic level, through the embassies. So there is no reason why they should continue firing, and unfortunately we get the brunt of it for the reason that our line of control has inhabited population all along
Exactly.
the line. While in India, there is some distance from the dividing line to the population centers.
But sir, we have never targeted the civilian population.
And we have
they have
never-
always done that.
Right. And they know that there are people, you know, they kill human beings, but they also destroy property, they kill cattle, they kill livestock. So, I mean, it is such a callous and unjustified policy that they have, which they don't seem to desist from. I think we have raised it so many times with the UNMOGIP, because that's the UN's representative in the area, but they disregard the UNMOGIP completely, the UN representative of the Military Observers Group for India and Pakistan. And the regularity with which this is done is extremely objectionable and worrying. India acts like an irresponsible neighbor, which is indulging in provocations on the border all the time. So, I am glad that we took the diplomatic representatives to the line of control and showed them what was happening. And I think we should do it more frequently,
All right.
if anything.
Now, interestingly, Javed sir, thank you very much, sir, for your time and for your company, sir. Now, it says ambassadors, diplomats, defense attachés and the representatives of various countries and international organizations visited Jura sector along the line of control. Now, when you look at the names of these countries, sir, almost from Muslim countries and Europeans as well as, I mean, there's a long list, around 20 different countries were, I mean, their representatives were there, sir. What do you make out of that, sir? Ambassador Saab says it's a very, very important, I would say, you know, effort by the Pakistani side to take them there on ground, show them the reality.
You see, ever since India has started unprovoked firing on the line of control, and it has been a long time. I think it's more than 2 years that India has resorted to this practice of unprovoked firing in Azad Kashmir.
2,333 violations
Violations
of
have
NOC.
taken place. So Pakistan has taken not only the diplomats, but military attaches, who's also diplomats, and foreign media teams on various occasions on LOC to show to them that Indians are actually targeting the civilians living on this side of LOC. And they have shown them their houses damaged by their firing, unprovoked firing. They have also shown them people who have died, who have been martyred in this unprovoked firing, and then the injured people, and particularly the innocent women, children, and old people, old age people. They were also shown to them that how India is resorting to this unprovoked firing and killing people, killing civilian population who are just innocent civilians living on this side of the border. So, and this is very important. I mean, India has never allowed any diplomat to visit that side of Indian line of control. They have never dared to do it because they know that they are committing an offense. They are committing the violation of the 2003 agreement that was reached between India and Pakistan on the line of control, and India has been invariably and incessantly violating this agreement. So Pakistan is now proving to the world that Pakistan is not responsible for the tension that is mounting on the line of control. The world, the Western world, the UN and other responsible powers are apprehensive that these two nuclear powers, if these skirmishes expand, can, the situation can trigger and
What
can
skirmishes
go
are
out of
primarily
control.
the kind of weapon they're using? It's not only the guns, it's the mortars and also the
Heavy weapons.
Yes.
And they have also used heavy guns also.
Yes, sir.
So they have extensively damaged the villages alongside the borders, killing innocent people. And as you have mentioned that they have violated the line of control over 2,000 times in this period of time.
2,333.
Exactly.
Still now.
So I think
This is not even the end of the year.
Pakistan's case is very strong. Pakistan has nothing to hide. And as Ambassador Saab was saying, that Pakistan has also reported this matter to UNMO-GIP, United Nations Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan. Although Indians do not give any access to these United Nations representatives in the Indian held Kashmir, and even at some stage, they had closed down, they had ordered to close down the United Nations Military Observer Group office in New Delhi. And so that is what the Indians are doing. Their attitude is very stubborn, very intransigent, and they are not allowing the United Nations observers, they are not allowing even the human rights organizations, the foreign media to visit the Indian held Kashmir, what's happening there, how the atrocities are being committed against innocent
But the
Kashmiris.
question is, how long can India do that? They have been doing it for a very long time. I mean, no human rights groups were allowed to go into that part. Even those who went were not shown the right areas, if you remember, sir. So this is one of the strategy Indians are using primarily.
I think the world has started taking note of it. I mean, from Pakistan's standpoint, the world community is not doing enough. They are not coming forward to put pressure on India to carry out its commitment to the Kashmiris, which it had made back in 1948, 49, and they are not doing it. But obviously, Pakistan is exposing India, and after this illegal action of annexing Indian held Kashmir to the Indian Union, I think the human rights associations, the Western media, the United Nations Council for Human Rights, and the European Union have taken note of it, and they have condemned these atrocities which are being
But sir, we
committed
really want
against.
to see some tangible steps taken by them so that at least it's visible that they are doing something. So let me also bring in General Raza Khan. Jalsab, two questions for you. The first one is, since you were a retired three-star general, and I'm sure you know the military tactics also, that's it. 2,333 violations up till now. This is almost the end of September. You have got October, November and December. Maybe there could be up to 3,000 by the end of this year. Despite the fact that we've been in this corona problem for almost 7-8 months. Despite that. Now, what I would like to ask you, why do you do this? When I say you, means why is the Indian military doing so? Is there a strategy, General Saab? What do they end up achieving by killing civilian people or by targeting our posts and killing the law enforcement and military personnel there as well, sir?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think this issue was also raised by Ambassador Saab, that who has provided this direction to the Indian forces to continue the violation at the ceasefire line. So the answer is that this has been provided to them at the highest possible level, which is at the level of the Indian Prime Minister and the Indian National Security Advisor. And they are doing this for a number of reasons. The main reason is that they want to divert the attention of the world, also their own people, from their own failures in Kashmir. They want to divert the attention from the human rights violations in Kashmir. They also want to divert attention of the world, and also their own people from their failing economy. And the main reason also is, as you are aware, that these ceasefire violations actually bring them votes. It has brought them votes in the past. And I think there are going to be elections in Bihar, and I think this you will see an increase in that. So these are some of the reasons. Now, one of the point mentioned was that they are using actually cluster shells there. Cluster shells are fired by the artillery guns, which the Bofors guns, which have been provided or purchased by India from Sweden, and this is actually prohibited according to the international law, because once a cluster shell is formed, then it actually dispenses a number of bomblets, and even once those bomblets land on the ground, then civilians, they could come and they could either step on it and it would explode, or even if there are cattle or others, at night, if you step on them, so innocent civilians are killed. So that's a violation, and it gives, the Pakistan military the rationale to actually engage and destroy the weapon systems through which at least these cluster bombs are fired. They may be in the depth, so we actually have to reach those depths, and we have the capability of doing so. It may actually lead to some escalation, but I think for the purpose of saving our civilian population, we may have to actually, we may be compelled to do all this. I think the diplomats were also shown the way the civilian targets were engaged and the destruction was carried out. I recommend, I think that the entire Pakistani media, and I'm talking of at least the television, whether it is state owned or whether it is private, they should actually give airtime to the propagation of all these violations and even buy airtime on international media to propagate this further. They've also shown, the bunkers for the civilians constructed by the HAK government and also the military to save our civilians. So I think the international community should come and assist us in saving our civilians. The United Nations military observer groups in India and Pakistan, their role needs to be enhanced. I think when the Prime Minister is going to address the General Assembly, he may like to make a mention of that. The Turkish president has already made a mention of the serious issue. He's called it a burning issue at his address of the UN General Assembly. We hope that the OIC countries will also make a mention of this in the General Assembly. And all these actions put together might put some pressure on India to stop these violations.
All right. Now, just one more area. So, in fact, we were having a word here. We have with us Ambassador Ali Sabir Naqvi and Javed Siddique Saab. And Sabir Naqvi was saying that primarily it's very important to take the diplomats there, whether they are the military attaches or commercial attaches or the ambassadors, high commissioners, or senior officials of any other embassy. Because when they see the reality on ground, it's a different ball game. Because if you know, I'm sure that every week they write a report and they send it back to their home country, and then they get the directives and and the further details and course of actions regarding that. So I think this is very important what the government has done, and this is not the first time they have done it. But sir, my question and my point is that how can we sort of influence or persuade the diplomatic community to put some pressure on India so that they should also send some military observers for that matter, or journalists or human rights activists, because primarily the biggest problem currently is about the human rights violations, sir.
But I was looking at the list of all those ambassadors and the military attaches, and I don't know if the U.S. Military attache or ambassador was there. I think the U.S. ambassador has just been designated, and you're going to talk about it later on. So I think we need to include more ambassadors and more attaches, particularly from the P5 countries, and from the countries who can actually influence India, the friends of India, like Russia and a number of other countries. So I think we need to continue this process, and actually increase the number of these visits. Of course, it is going to be a voluntary kind of a thing. But if the media covers all this and feedback is provided to them, even on a weekly basis, to all the embassies, and I'm talking of live video coverage, when the LOC violation is happening, I think it could be recorded and provided to them so that they can provide a feedback to their own countries and particularly to the United Nations General Assembly, to the United Nations Security Council members. So that is the only way, that pressure could be increased on India so that they can stop or at least reduce these violations.
All right. Now, so let me also read out the names of those countries. It said The delegation includes diplomats, defense starchies, and representatives of various countries and organizations, including Azerbaijan, Bosnia-Herzegovina, the European Union, Portugal, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, Palestine, Greece, Australia, Islamic Republic of Iran, Kyrgyzstan, Republic of Iraq, UK, Italy, Poland, Uzbekistan, Germany, Switzerland, France, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Afghanistan, and the UN World Food Program. Now, you're talking about some serious European
Yes.
countries, sir. That's a
Yeah.
very powerful
Yeah.
delegation, I would say.
European
Three.
Union.
Yes, sir.
3 out of 5 permanent members, and the fourth, 3 were there, like France, UK, and the third,
Germany.
Germany. Germany.
Well, Chinese know the reality,
And the
sir.
Chinese,
Russian and the
I was
Americans.
going to say that the Chinese know what it is. The only standout of this is the US. Now, General Saab was mentioning the US. I think the US, the American representatives deliberately keep away from this. They must be invited. I'm sure the Foreign Office has been inviting them, but they avoid going, because the US has a special relationship with India. It has a strategic partnership with India. So they don't want to get embarrass India in any manner. Now, that be as it may, I mean, you can't force a diplomatic representative to go somewhere. But what is happening is that, and that is the positive side, that we are doing this and making all these important countries aware of what is happening on the border. Saudi Arabia, all the Arab countries, EU, they are all there. So, and the
Yep.
permanent members that I mentioned. So, we are making them aware. Secondly, I think our position in the United Nations is being strengthened incrementally, because we have had 3 sessions of the Security Council members, informal sessions, and without definitive position that UN could have taken. But and there is the politics. You see, France, which has sold Rafales to India, is the strongest opponent of a formal session of the Security Council on Kashmir. So, that may be the case, but we are moving ahead on the UN front. The international media, as Javed Sahab was saying, is all now turning against India, because they are carrying articles, they are writing editorials, they are covering reportage from the Kashmir area, and they all are, from New York Times, Washington Post to London Times, Guardian, Le Monde, Die Welt of Germany, even Japan, Asahi Shimbun and whatever, they all are now writing against India's policies in Kashmir, and the situation, the human rights element that you talked about, they are all talking about the massive violation of human rights in the state of Jammu and Kashmir by Indian security forces.
Dr. Sahab, you have served as a senior diplomat in the capacity of an ambassador also. Normally, sir, whenever such trips, let me call this a trip, is planned where you are supposed to go and visit an area, maybe you can call it ground zero or whatever. What's the protocol, sir? Obviously, once you have seen that, you observed it, you were briefed about it, you come back to your mission, and then you brief your own staff about it, and then they write a story, and that weekly report, that particular story would be attached with it and emailed to your headquarters, your foreign office in your country. That's how it works, sir?
Yeah, I mean, whatever visit or conference or seminar they may attend or participate in, they report to their headquarters, they report to their foreign office, and in the case of the defense attaches, they also report to their military establishment. So, the reports are going there. I think, India is in a much more defensive position in regard to Kashmir now compared to even last year. It is far more on a defensive position, and it is just warding off any interest that any country might show regarding Kashmir. But this can't go on. This is untenable. I mean, suppose there is some situation in some country where everybody is asking questions, that country will be warding it off for some time, but it cannot go on indefinitely. So I think sooner or later, the issue of Kashmir cannot be hidden under the carpet, and this is the age of information where nothing can be hidden. There used to be a time when they would close all news coming from Kashmir area, and they would keep out the Amnesty
black it
and
out, yeah.
Human Rights Watch and total blackout. But they can't do that anymore. There is social media, there are all kinds of internet, this and that. So though they have closed down internet connections in Kashmir, but still social media is still having enough access for the world to know what is happening, and that I think will produce.
It's a different world now, sir. It's a different ballgame
It will
altogether.
produce results.
Yeah, Javed sir, since we talk about the journalists on ground, this time when even let's talk about the last year in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, what we witnessed that the journalists were not allowed to go there in the main areas. Curfew was imposed. People were picked up from their houses. Literally, those who got injured were dragged out of the hospitals. No food, no clean drinking water, no medical facility, no universities, no colleges, targeting the youth primarily. And even, it was so, I was surprised to read about it, that those people who had some pictures of Burhan Wani as a hero, maybe a poster, they were picked up. And God knows where they are. This is exactly what is going on. But since you cannot report about it, since being on the ground, the story doesn't make that kind of a difference. So over here, do you think now things are changing, and whatever Modi committed during the last 13 months or so, now maybe he's realizing that he did go wrong somewhere?
You see, you have read, I think you must have read this statement of former Chief Minister of Indian and
Yes,
Kashmir,
sir.
Farooq Abdullah.
Yes, sir.
He has said that...
What a statement.
Exactly, stunning. He said that the Kashmiris are ready to welcome the Chinese army in Kashmir instead of the Indian army. So that's the height of it, because a former Chief Minister and a pro-India politician of a very high stature has come out
His
with this
father,
statement.
his son, just imagine.
Exactly.
Very strong political
and
family.
he
Yep.
has also, he was in New Delhi and he protested against the atrocities that are being committed against Kashmiris in front of Mahatma Gandhi's statue in New Delhi, which is situated close to the Indian Parliament. So that is the situation. The repression to which the Kashmiris are being subjected, and the atrocities that are being unleashed on them for the last 416 days. 416 days.
Correct, sir.
Over a year. So they are not hidden from the eyes of the people, generally from the world eyes. So the situation is changing. And also the Kashmiri diaspora through the social media is exposing the atrocities of the Indian army and the human rights, massive human rights violations that are taking place in IHK. And the world knows it. But as the Ambassador Sahib has pointed out, that some of the major powers of the world, they have their interest in India. It is a big power. It is an economic power, of course. And the Americans have found a new strategic ally in this region in the shape of India. And therefore, they are not going to put pressure on it to stop these violations and to stop these human rights violations there. And they are not also paving the way for the International Human Rights Organization to go there. The European Union, they have demanded that the organization, the Human Rights Organization be allowed, the international journalists should be allowed to go there and see for themselves as to what is going on there. The Indian journalists are not allowed to go there. Some of the reports that emerge from Indian and Kashmir about the Indian Army's excesses that they are committing, they find their way to the Western media through the Kashmiri journalists, through the social media. And some of the journalists who are working for foreign media, the Kashmiri journalists, they are working very hard to communicate to their newspapers and the media organizations to portray the situation there on ground. So the world is well aware of what's happening in Kashmir. And I think some of the leaders of the Western world have also made it very clear to the Indian leadership to stop this inhuman activity that's going on there, to put an end to this lockdown which has been there for the last 416 days, and people are dying. And in the middle of the night, the young people are being picked up, as you have said.
Yes, sir.
Particularly the Kashmiri youth, and Farooq Abdullah has also mentioned this, and he has demanded that these Kashmiri young people, youth, should immediately be released. Thousands of them have been held up, and the parents and the relatives do not know where are they. So
They are just missing people
missing
now.
people. So I think that the world is watching, and they are taking note of it. It's not that the world is not aware of it, and I think the Kashmiris, through their continuous struggle and their blood and sacrifices, they have kept the issue of Kashmir alive, and they are not going to be budged down.
So they
But
don't have a choice now. They can't go back where they,
They
are.
cannot.
Either they'll go.
They cannot, because over 100,000 Kashmiris have
Been
laid
killed.
down their lives in the last 10 to 12 years. So it's not it's not easy for them to go back or to compromise with the Indian. And after giving such huge sacrifices, how can we think that the Kashmiris will compromise with the
Extrajudicial
situation? It's
killing has
just out of
become a
question.
norm there, sir. I mean, recently there was a story that so many people were killed. I mean, and now the military, I mean, they're under some sort of pressure at the moment as we speak. Now, sir, Jalsa, there is another story of Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, and he said that now, if you remember, when the Indians, I mean, they were enjoying the influence and they were able to persuade certain countries like Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Bhutan, etc., not to attend SARC meeting. Now, so Pakistan seems to be, very, I mean, I would say optimistic and positive regarding having this particular meeting of SARC in Pakistan. And Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab also reiterated that Pakistan's willingness to host the 19th summit of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation in Islamabad at the earliest, expressing the hope that the artificial obstacles means obviously whatever India is trying to do in that regard. Your take on that part, sir? How important that would be?
Well, I think India has, tried to prevent the SARC from functioning for a number of reasons, and it will, I think, try to do this at the same time. We should not have, very high hope from SARC, and therefore we should actually concentrate our energies, on other forums and on our economic development. If it happens, I think it will be good. But if it does not happen, then I think we should not be disappointed too much. And it will actually be in the interest of India if it happens here in Pakistan, and whatever, they have lost in terms of, let's say, diplomatic or political reputation in the past because of their disastrous decisions about Kashmir and East Ladakh. Probably, it could repair some of their damage. So I think we should leave it to them. If they are willing to come, it is all right. We should not press this point too much and make requests to India to come and convene the SARC meeting in Pakistan.
Now, Jalsa, I would like your comment also on this statement of Farooq Abdullah, the former Chief Minister of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. He says angry Kashmiris would prefer Chinese rule than the Indian rule.
I think
Is that the frustration that is coming out? Because this man has always been with them. Even his son, the moment they are in the opposition, they always come up with such statements. Even the lady of PDP, Mehbooba Mufti.
Yes, I think the three times puppet Prime Minister of the Indian occupied Kashmir has been, making statements like this in the past as well. Right now, he finds himself, between the devil and the deep sea. And I've heard that interview, and I think he is trying to rebuild his own image in front of his people, which has been shattered. Remember that in the same interview, he says that he's going to work only for the restoration of Article 370 and 35A, and he has also said that he's not interested in Kashmir going to Pakistan at any time. He has also stated, categorically, which is right, and I think all Kashmiris are unanimous on this, that the new domicile law in India is meant to create a Hindu majority in the Indian occupied Kashmir, and that it will be opposed by all Kashmiris. That is what it is, and I think we should not read too much into this statement.
All right. Now, so quickly, the other topic that was about the Afghan peace process and Pakistan's role, sir. Now things seem to be taking some sort of a shape now. I'm not sure about the timeline that when exactly is going to happen, but when you talk about the American elections, sir, they're around the corner. October and then November, not even 5 weeks. I mean, finally, but interestingly, Trump says that if he loses, he's not going to quit that easily. I mean, I don't know what he has been having lately, but the point is that he means business. So, Afghan situation in such turmoil, if he loses and he is not giving up or whatever happens, that is going to have a direct impact on this particular issue, sir.
Yes, and for that reason, the Americans are greatly appreciative of Pakistan's role in trying to promote understanding between the different Afghan factions, the most important being the Taliban. So, in the intra-Afghan dialogue, it is this stage. We had the first stage of the US-Taliban negotiations, which resulted in the February 29 agreement. And now, since that time, there has been, first there were these problems about the prisoners and all that, release of prisoners by the Afghan government. And then the Afghan government eventually had to come down from that position of not wanting to deal with the Afghan factions, and now they themselves went to Doha when Abdullah went there. So, this is stage, again, Pakistan is playing a very key role because this is the more difficult stage.
All right, sir.
And therefore, the intra-Afghan dialogue has to be pushed ahead, and the Americans are appreciating us because their elections are so close.
I mean, let's see, sir. But anyway, thank you very much, Ambassador Saab. It was a pleasure having you, sir. Jan sir, thank you very much for your comments also. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you on Monday, inshallah. Till then, you take care. Khuda Hafiz.